18, go ahead.
All right, we have shots fired red, shots fired blue as well. We have one officer down. We got him back behind cover. At this point, I got a 4-man front set up, facing north. If you guys in the Bearcat are up on the road, have them come south to our location. And we're up on thermal right now. This guy's not moving. He's down.
How copy?
Copy. Suspect in custody, 10-7.
Yeah, static buzz, frequencies clear. Rain squads like the danger is near. Radio waves cut through the night. Tactical moves, we strike with might. Reach the door, flesh and clear. Echoes loud in your ear. Coordinates set, we move as one. Missions hot, the battle's won. Yeah, radio ran. We on the air, signal strong. We're everywhere. The hype is live, friend don't stop. We strategize.
So I think tonight we were kind of hyping this up on Wednesday when we were talking. We did one of the, our comms Wednesdays. Tonight, of course, we got Tac Sunday being the subject for the night. It's our live Tactical Sunday show, and tonight we're diving into one of the most challenging operational environments for virtually any responder, specifically your TAC medics or any medical capable person for that matter, but performing tactical medical interventions in low light conditions and or situation depending under night vision, because low light changes everything. It changes how you see, how you move, how you communicate, and really how you make decisions. We got into that last Sunday. We were talking about some of the low light stuff. And when you add night vision devices into the mix, the human factors challenges just multiply.
Yeah, man. And more importantly, this isn't focused just on night vision. This is going to be a whole lot of the low light portion,
Yeah, and I think the big thing for tonight should be just getting into the understanding of all of those challenges that come along with operating in that environment. Not necessarily procedures, not by step medical instructions, but thinking, the awareness, and the decision-making that supports safe, effective operations in these environments.
Absolutely. Sounds good.
Yes. I think we should just talk about perception, communication. We can get into some of the equipment stuff, the environmental factors that go along with that. A big one I think that has to be addressed too is the cognitive load that comes into play with this, and even how different fluids, especially blood, appear under night vision, and when you may need to transition to white light. We'll kind of get into all of that. It's a huge topic. So I think we should kind of settle in and get started.
Yeah, man.
So go ahead.
Cool. No, I was waiting for you. I said, let's go.
Awesome. Yeah, I just give a shout. Terminal Elements in here. I know. Some fellow radio nerds. What's up, man? That is us for sure. Radio, medical, tactical nerds. The big three.
Yeah, a few purchases were made this week. Well, quite a few purchases were made this week, radio-wise. We'll have to get into later.
Okay. So I think a good place to start would be with the mindset, because low light environments, as we have seen time and time again, both in our actual operations or in the training that we've done, low light environments demand a different mental approach. And the first principle, I think that it's kind of overutilized, but it is the truth, especially when operating at night, that whole slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And not slow as in hesitant, but slow as in being deliberate.
Well, there are lots of different reasons for that too, because if we think at night, I don't know if I'm getting into this too early, but at night, our weather calms down, right? There's not as much wind, so noises carry further. Since people don't have their ability to see things, that their sound detection gets better. So being slow, smooth, and deliberate with your movements just, aids to you not being detected better,
Sure. Well, since you mentioned the weather, I know Conservative Element does the wildfire stuff with me. And one of the things
yeah,
we
definitely
deal with every night that's not as relevant like in a city department is we have this thing that they refer to as inversion. During the daytime, the sun comes out, everything dries out, your smoke lifts, you get the RH to drop, so your fire activity picks up. Come nighttime, the inversion sets in, and the whole scene, the whole mountain just changes due to the weather. So
yeah,
that's a
yeah.
huge aspect. But I think the big thing here is that low light environments, they absolutely punish rushing. It punishes assumptions, it punishes being overconfident. And on top of that, the second principle is having awareness before any action being taken, before you touch anything, before you move into a space, before you approach a patient. You have to pause and orient yourself and let your senses kind of catch up to where you are.
And that's difficult if there's adrenaline involved too,
Absolutely. Well, I forget what episode it was, however many ago, we hit the epinephrine, the norepinephrine dumps, and how that kind of affects everything that we're doing. So those are two big ones. And I think a third principle you could tack onto this would be communication becomes more important as visibility decreases. Because when you can't see everything, you're going to start relying on your team's voices, their updates, and just how clear they can really be.
Yeah, and a big thing is you might want to get away from the audible communications, if we're trying to be stealth. So, alternative things like ATACs and stuff like that.
Well, we know sound carries at night over greater distances. And I think, since I just said, the low light environment kind of punishes rushing and haste, the low light environment, if you play it rightly, it rewards calmness. If you're calm, if you have disciplined behavior, that's how you kind of defeat the low light environment.
Well, it rewards prior preparedness and prior training. If you're ready for it, it can work in your favor. If you're not, it's going to be a hindrance at least.
Which is cool because it's kind of what we talked about before with we're getting into the pre-planning, specifically medical comms, and every single thing we've touched on, especially communications related, has been pre-planning. And here we go. One of the biggest factors that you and I can both come up with for successful operations in a low light environment is pre-planning.
Yep, down to everything, like down to your watch settings. Everything has to be pre-planned. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, so since we're talking about pre-planning and kind of the human brain, let's talk about how what low light does to the human brain. Because I know the first thing I think of is that your depth perception drops and your brain really struggles to judge distance.
No, absolutely. Even when you've been training with these, if you do have night vision, if you've been training with them for a while, like there's still a big learning curve. Depth perception is a big one, no matter what model device you have, if you have one at all.
No, these I paid for it dearly. We were doing a training exercise, and of course, you're trying to keep your peripheral vision and be able to see what's kind of going on around you a little bit. But in my nods, there's a down tree. I go to step over the tree or step onto the log, but I was just shy of it because my depth perception is crap, and I just sheared the front of my shin right down it. So one of those like box jump injuries that just like hurt you to your core.
At least you didn't smash your night vision on the ground.
No, I did not do that.
Maybe somebody did, but yeah.
But the thing with that is because of depth perception, because you're struggling to judge distance, that really affects every little bit of your movement, of your spacing, and really how you start interacting with everything in the environment around you.
Just as a general rule, and I don't know if we're trying to get too specific here, but especially when you're on nods, you're in night vision, everything is exaggerated. So looking around, right? Everything is exaggerated. My movements, if I'm reaching for something, if I'm stepping, especially to an unknown, it's exaggerated, right? And I'm expecting to meet some sort of resistance, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and then I think right behind that, because we're talking about, secondary to movement, is contrast becomes your primary visual tool, because you're not seeing detail anymore. You're seeing shapes, you're seeing the edges, and really, due to the way our human eyes are developed throughout history, and I went into this last week, is that you're there for that threat detection. So you're also you're just seeing those shapes, those edges, and most importantly, movement.
Well, that's the big thing with night vision, especially because we're on a what's the word for it? We only have a couple colors we're looking at. Okay. So our eyes are usually looking for color, contrast, and movement. Now we're down to contrast and movement. There's no color involved anymore,
Yeah. And then on top of that, again, we kind of touched on this last week, but your field of view narrows so much. We say pretty much whether you're using single tube or dual tube, your field of view kind of gets come down to like roughly 40 degrees. So you see less at once, and your awareness becomes more focused on what's directly in front of you. So because you're working in a diminished sensory environment, your senses become narrower, and then you're putting a night vision device in front of your face. Now you're narrowing that down, or artificially.
Yep. And geez, I don't want to get too much into technical stuff, but I'll just say, yeah, I agree with you. You can't, no matter how many tubes you add, unless you get some sort of expensive panoramic thing, you're down to about 40 degrees.
Yeah, and even, you and I got to use the panos at one of those classes we did, and I think it still only gets you out to like a 60 degree or 54 degree field of view, even with 4 tubes going on. So the whole peripheral vision thing is hard to adjust for.
You got to kind of train that into people, because not everybody has adjustable gain or anything anymore. That's kind of on the old stuff, but you have to be aware. You shouldn't wear the little eye cup things that are on there, right? Your nod should be out in front of you, and you should be able to still use, if there's any light available at all, still use your normal peripheral vision to see movement out. Even if you can't see detail, see some sort of movement out here, as well as scanning the entire time, right?
Yeah. So look at the things that we're kind of stacking on top of each other here. First, we just said, our depth perception dropping, and then we're only seeing in contrast, no more details, just shapes and edges and movement, and then narrowing our field of view artificially just by putting the device in front of our face. And then fourth, we haven't even mentioned it yet, but we've kind of harped on it in previous episodes, is your stress is going to increase. And because the low light creating uncertainty increases your cognitive load, and increased cognitive load affects your decision making, which we all know we start to get tunnel vision when we get our stress. So now that field of view is kind of tightening down even more.
You kind of give yourself that artificial, I don't give a shit attitude. I don't mean that in a bad way, but you kind of have to personally take a step back from the situation and kind of see the whole picture.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to a stressful environment. I know that I'm going to have these additional stressors. I need to take a step back, soak it all in, just to get the job done.
And I think one of the biggest things is to help you have that exact attitude is understanding these human factors that can help you anticipate your own limitations and adjust your behavior, once again, ahead of time. You're almost pre-planning your brain for what you're about to encounter.
No, absolutely. Especially when, if you do have night vision, if you're only wearing them a few times a year, that that can get pretty confusing with all the different dials and adjustments you have. The last time to be trying to figure that all out is during a live operation, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we say that with everything. The time to be trying to figure anything out is not in the moment. It should all be getting done ahead of time. So I think one of the big things here is let's talk about what I know we don't want to make this focus specifically on night vision, but let's talk about what the night vision devices, because they are incredible tools, but they come with some trade-offs. So let's kind of talk about what it changes as far as when you're working in them.
Yeah, what do you lose? What do you gain? Type of thing.
Exactly.
We talked about the peripheral vision earlier. It definitely degrades any, what would you call it? Any of your natural night vision, if you have it, you know, like I could walk through a wooded area under moonlight, especially this time of year when there's no tree cover, especially when the ground's covered in snow, and I could see a whole lot of stuff. If I were to put on night vision, I can see better, but I'm seeing that 40 degrees better, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, go ahead.
I just think that the kind of the biggest things we kind of get into is we just talked about it a second ago. We lose our peripheral vision, we lose our natural depth perception, and one of the biggest things that we're excuse me, that we're kind of so used to using is we lose color, and that we didn't mention before.
And that's one of the main things. Our eyes are color, contrast, movement in that order. We notice color, contrast, and movement, you know, especially in our peripherals, and we're cutting the color off immediately.
And when you live in your life every day in color, I think it's one of those things that you get when you don't have it. It really messes with you if you haven't trained just kind of seeing that way. Chris, what's going on, man? And I think, kind of right to that. So the losing color, to go from the vivid color we live our normal lives in, to everything becoming a shade of green or white or gray, depending on the system, that just makes your brain have to work harder to interpret what it's seeing.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it puts an additional load on your brain, and it doesn't help if you have additional stressors.
No, and that's the thing. I think when you're doing that, because if you showed somebody different various signage, like traffic signs that we see all the time, we've kind of associated that color with the lettering to mean one thing. If you took away that color, that would almost be a good test to give to people to say, hey, what are these signs with no color? And see what they come up with and how different the answers are.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, because they're based on that.
And then another thing is movement itself looks different. Shadows look different, and distance feels different under night vision, which we were talking about a little bit, but it's got to be re-emphasized.
Yeah, and that's your movement, and that's the movement that you are watching too, right? That's how other people are moving, how they're moving through the shadows. You know, you might not see them until they pop out in some sort of, where the moonlight actually comes or where that starlight's actually coming. They might just pop out.
And I think it never really comes up directly. We always talk about the depth perception, because everybody focuses in on the depth perception.
I think you kind of get used to it.
True.
Yeah.
But I think the problem though is that inadvertently, just wearing night vision, it's also going to affect your balance because your depth perception is affected. Your body's trying to compensate by slowing down, and you start taking shorter steps than you're used to.
Well, I think that's where time under nods comes into play. It's very important to have. The more time you have under these things, the more, again, muscle memory isn't a real thing, but I'll just pretend it exists, right? We're calling it myelination or whatever, but time under nods is very important. The amount of time you wear these, you need your brain to kind of get used to it. So it remembers that, things are a little different when you have these things on you.
Sure. Well, and I think the key to understanding that night vision enhances visibility, but it does not replace your natural vision. It's a tool, and it's a really, really good tool, but it's not the same thing as just, okay, all of a sudden I can see at night now.
Yeah, definitely. And it's kind of a shock to the system if you're not used to it.
Yeah. Well, and dude, so we're talking about how we're changing how different things see, and then I see the terminal element, just his comment, they haven't even gotten the fluids yet. Let's get into how fluids appear under night vision, because this is something that when we do our low light medical operations course, that we kind of get into heavy when we're doing an assessment under night vision or with a, just a red headlamp on. It's never really discussed. In fact, it's kind of a rare topic to even hear somebody bringing up, but it's incredibly important to discuss how fluids appear under night vision.
Well, the thing is, the classes that we've attended are with these high speed special forces guys or whatever. They're not medics, right? So they're kind of just like everything else. They leave the medic thing to the medic guys, and they kind of don't really think about, how bodily fluids appear under night vision or low light conditions. So it kind of leaves it up to us.
Well, and I think that's one of the things is, under most night vision systems, fluids don't look the way they look. Forget even the sunlight, even under white light, because we just addressed it. You're losing color information entirely. Blood, for example, does not appear red. Instead, it often appears as just a darker, lower reflectivity patch or smear. And we've also seen it where sometimes it almost looks black, and sometimes it just looks like dull or matte.
Depends what surface it's on. It depends what your source of ambient lighting is. That's why the low light thing comes into play, because you might not always want to stay on night vision. You might want to go to a low light source, either, a green light, a red light, whatever, or a dull white light. You don't have to stay all super secret everywhere.
Well, you don't. And that's one of the things. So just this be a sidebar here to everybody that's watching this. Through testing, one of the things that we have found is there's a million stuff. All of your old school military lights, everybody was using that red lens. And in the last video, we talked about using a red lens and why historically that was chosen. However, they're actually finding now that a blue light, you can get better venipuncture with it if you're trying to do IV access under low light conditions. And the blue light has a shorter wavelength than the red light, which is why your backstage Broadway crews are using blue light now. And it can also mimic natural moonlight more. So it may not look as artificial in a woodland environment if you have a moon out. So just a couple things as to reason for the light, why there's some new schools of thought on why it's changing. But yeah.
Interesting that you know so much about Broadway. But anyway.
New York City, buddy.
Yeah, I'm just saying. But yeah, man, so blue or green kind of makes the blood appear black, in my experience. Do you want me to bring up my recent situation? My recent low light job, since I know we have a couple medics in here already?
Yeah, go for it, dude.
So yeah, earlier this year, again, I'm not going to get super specific, but we had a barricaded guy. He shot a woman in the house he was living in, shot at the medics and the cops when they came. We got there. Again, I was one of the first responding SWAT guys, so we were lower manpower at the time. My job was to go around and try to make contact with the shot woman. I got her to jump out of her window, or I got her to exit her window on her own. But again, the shooter was still inside. It was pitch black out back. I didn't have night vision or anything on. We were just getting there just early on in the operation. So no light wasn't an option, but also I needed some light, right? So personally, for years I wear a headlamp on the front of my vest. All I do, I I wrap around the 2 shoulder straps just so it's pointed down. So if I move my head around, I'm not shining light everywhere. The light's just in my working space, right? It's just a nice, dull, dimmable. I think it's a stream light. I think like a Cobb style LED panel. It can go red or white, but it just kind of generally illuminates the area. So that's what I've had on my vest for years. When I have that, like, I'm not shining my light everywhere else. It only stays concentrated on whatever I'm working on. But that's what I use in that case to treat this lady, you know? So still low light, no night vision. Yeah.
No night vision. Yeah. But I think one of the big things, though, if we're talking about night vision and how these fluids, especially blood, are appearing in it, it's really all depending on the surface that it's laying on, because sometimes it, can be have that lower reflectivity and look darker, or sometimes it can look like it's dull or just a matte finish. It's all on how it's absorbing the light rather than reflecting it on what your night vision is seeing. And depending on the surface, it may blend in. On dark surfaces, it can kind of disappear, or on reflective surfaces, it may just distort what it looks like. So that's really it on blood. And we actually have, I should have made like a screen that I should have pulled up. So on our PowerPoint presentation, where we're doing the low light, we actually have a slide where we've taken real blood, like fake blood, ketchup, and have photographed it under night vision on a white latex glove. So in your mind, when you're doing a March assessment, you can kind of imagine what that would look like if you're doing a blood sweep and you actually find blood on somebody as you're doing it. So it's another good tool. Anybody who's looking to put some training together for your guys, and you want to show them something that's not really well out there, that'd be a good thing to do. Or you can shoot us an email and I can send that picture to you. You guys can feel free to use it, no problem. But some of the other stuff is that we can get into is the fact of water or sweat or spilled drinks. Again, just other fluids you could be seeing under night vision, and they may appear shiny or reflective under night vision, and they can really look similar to each other. And it's almost the same topic that we have with why we don't like black latex gloves.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of my recent new guy classes I had in a unit, I may have inserted an IV in my own arm and bled onto these different colored gloves just to show them why we don't use black gloves. Because the blood disappears, And that's during the day, not to mention when we're in low light conditions.
Yep.
Don't mind I think there's a snowblower right outside.
Dan B just said that it's cold and snowy in the Midwest. Well, imagine doing a patient assessment in a low light environment under night vision. You're laying in the snow to do your blood sweep, and you pull your either A, black gloves out, or B, you're wearing night vision, and you look at your gloves, and whether, again, it's black latex or it's night vision, it may just appear wet. You don't know if it's blood or melting snow or oil. And that's part of the whole issues with not doing the proper training and knowing what you're looking for.
That's where the taste test comes in.
Yeah. Well, Rich, you put so much stuff in your mouth that you shouldn't, that we all question. So that's not surprising you would do that. So
trying to save lives.
Here's the key takeaway on that is the fact that night vision removes the visual cues you would normally rely on to interpret fluids, because we're so used to, hey, look, imagine pulling your bag of ringers or your bag of saline out. When we're doing your checks, like the National Registry, one of the first things you do is it clear? It's not cloudy. It's not contaminated. You can't do that under night vision because it's not going to look normal.
I think with this, generally, just the whole bodily fluids issue, whatever, just the whole patient assessment thing is this is why Rant got away from, we're not doing a night vision class. It's low light, no light, right? Just because we're using light doesn't mean we were using 10,000 lumens. We can use a little bit of light. We can light up our patient a little bit. We can use red light, green light, whatever. Just, we can, we're making that decision. We're thinking of it before. We're training with it before. We have the proper equipment. we don't need $10,000 night vision to do it. You know, we're just putting some thought into it first.
Well, and I think this, so let's get into, because this is one of the things I think you and I thought was really cool is, when do you transition to white light? Because I think this is one of the most important judgment calls in low light medical work.
Tough one. I think it's that whole risk a lot to save a lot, you know, type of thing. What do you have to lose?
Well, so the risk a lot to save a lot. I think what you have to keep in mind is, because the way we just went through, the way our brains are wired, the way we're used to seeing things, white light gives you clarity. It gives you color. It gives you detail. But then it's also giving away your position. It affects anybody else around you that, if they are wearing night vision, it affects how their night vision is going to be working. And it, quite frankly, changes the environment now that you're working it.
Yeah, because once you kind of switch over to white light, you're I wouldn't say you're 100% committed, but you're kind of going in that direction now. In my situation, in exchange for being visible to the suspect who is still in the house with a gun, I was able to move to some additional cover, right? Because my only option was to use white light. So I moved to some additional cover. And in exchange for, you know, I was in a little bit more safety, so I used a little bit more light. If that makes sense.
No, for sure. So I think case in point there is that the decision to use white light is a balance between the operational needs and the medical needs.
Yeah, we're being told to slow down now. Slow down a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely a balance. Again, it's situational dependent, because if we're in the woods or if we're in a remote area, that's different than me being in or right against a house, you know, because room to room, I could have lights on in this room, no lights on in this room. When we're out in the woods, we're making ourselves visible for hundreds of yards in every direction. So it's definitely situational dependent.
So I think the context matters. The situation that you're in dictates whether light discipline still buys you anything at that point. And I kind of bring this up. If your position is already compromised, as in you've been shot at, a team member's been hit, you know, if a teammate is injured and the threat knows you're there, then the secrecy's gone. I think
so generally in policing, if we were to go into a structure under night vision or somewhere, if we were to be engaged, or once we engage, and I don't mean by shooting somebody, whether we're in, you know, once we make our announcements, we're going white light, we're going to be visible. From then on, everything is going to be visible, right? Compared to when I'm trying to extract somebody like this person that was shot, you know, recently, I'm still trying to maintain my stealth so this guy doesn't know I'm there, so he doesn't fire additional shots as me as I'm trying to extract this lady out.
Yeah, that's just it. I think, you know, if the again, the threat knows you're there, the secrecy's gone, at that point, your white light becomes a tool for efficiency, and it's no longer a liability. Because again, they already know you're there. So when stealth is no longer a resource that you're benefiting from, it's kind of stop pretending that it is. Get the illumination you need so that you can work accurately and safely.
Yep. But I'm going to throw a wrench into that too.
Go ahead.
Woodland scenarios. If I'm using white light out in a wooded area, well, when I have night vision on out in a wooded area, I can see hundreds of meters in every direction. Once I commit to white light, all I'm seeing is my cone of light that's moving around. So I'm losing a lot.
Yep.
Which is kind of the opposite with flipping a switch on inside of a room, where now I see everything. You know, it's different between whether indoors or outdoors.
You're almost tunnel visioning yourself by
by using white light.
This area, but now you see nothing past just that area. That's a really good point.
I think we're just going to confuse everybody and ourselves now. We got into that.
Well, yeah. Let me just get back to, so we're talking about, you know, when to white light, when not to white light. And as far as exploiting stealth goes, if, say, for example, if you're dealing with a sudden medical issue within your team and it's not a teammate who's been shot, well, then you still have the ability and maybe the necessity to maintain stealth. And if the environment hasn't been alerted to your presence, then this is where you may need to stay in a night vision or use the lowest level of light possible.
Yeah. So we touched on lights before, and I know they're asking about them before, but the color green, you can still see blood pretty well, and it doesn't damage your own night vision too bad, or your teammates. Blue light, and we've tested this. When we're at these trainings, you can see vasculature pretty well with the blue lights. You can kind of see the vasculature through the skin, and it still doesn't damage your own night vision too much. So that's something to think about. Red is whatever. Red they use because it's not too visible to other people, but as far as maintaining your own night vision, green's kind of the color to go with. Also with green lights, my experience with green LED lights, blood pops, and it really doesn't affect my night vision too much. So in the mornings when we're going to warrants, I keep my map out just to make sure we're going in the right direction. So I keep my green light on my headlamp, and as soon as I turn it off, I'm not, my vision isn't washed out or anything. I'm ready to go. That's my personal experience.
No, dude, that's good. Do you want to address, there's a comment there from Emma that said, I have good night vision, so white light would blot me out, I think, in that scenario.
White light's gonna, it depends on your age too. Your eyes kind of degrade, so the older you get, the longer it takes for your vision to come back after being washed out by white lights. But green lights, as long as it's not too intense, and usually the headlamps aren't, because they're usually just a couple LED diodes they're putting that out. They're not gonna diminish. There's not gonna be a reset period with that. That's a good way to put it. So if you use a white light and you turn a white light off, there's like a reset period where your eyes have to get back used to it. If you have a green LED, it's usually none at all.
Well, last week I went into rhodopsin, or your visual purple, and how it takes 20 to 4 minutes for your body to generate. And if there's a bright light, within seconds, you lose it all. The cells it doesn't work anymore. So yeah. If you didn't watch last week's episode, watch that, because we kind of really went into the body's natural night vision and how it works.
I didn't. I couldn't get my camera to work.
You could.
I was trying.
Yeah.
I was trying.
To it. So I think really this all comes down to whether or not, again, especially from the medical side, and this is how I would justify it, because it's all about what you can kind of articulate, and from the fact of, it comes down to whether you can safely interpret what you're seeing. Because if you cannot distinguish fluids, if you cannot confirm, what it is that you're touching, or if you cannot assess the environment, then that's when white light becomes necessary. That's how you justify it.
Yep. But also, there's never any absolutes. There's never any absolute always. There's never any absolute nevers. Because if you remember when we went to these classes years ago, they're saying, oh, somebody went down. Oh, white light all day. Until I was alone with my new guy as cover with this outstanding shooter treating this lady. And I'm like, I really don't want too much light back here, but I still have to treat this lady, but I'm not willing to turn on spotlights to do it,
Well, and that came into, again, if you're still exploiting stealth, it all kind of depends what brought the medical emergency about, on whether or not you should transition to that. So yeah, I would say, this isn't necessarily about performing procedures. It's more about awareness. If you cannot safely understand the scene and you need more information, then that's kind of the scale you should be using on whether or not to switch to white light or not.
Avoiding white light and experiment on your own with other colors, Yeah. There's a lot of these different devices out there. Yeah.
But I would say, so to your point, any visible light especially is a tool, and you want to use it deliberately not just casually, no matter what color.
But yeah, absolutely. And that's why I talk about where I mount my light. So it's deliberately in one area. It's not flashing around everywhere. It's not on my helmet where it's, I'm shining in every direction I look.
Yeah. Yep. So how do you get the others on your team to buy into the green light, red light, etc.? Are they listening or stuck in their own ways? That's a good question. Rich, I'll let you go first.
Well, on my team, they kind of learn or they don't. We do punish for white light discipline during our tactical operation or tactical training. If you accidentally deploy your white light, especially from your rifle, when we're doing some sort of night vision thing, we haze you pretty good, So that kind of gets a message across with that. And it's usually just the medical guys that are trying to use some other sort of light. So it's easier one-on-one with them since we're a smaller group to try to get that message across.
Yeah, so I would say to that question, so my big thing is if you've kind of been identified as like the guy, so in my unit where I am when it comes to night vision and a lot of other gear related things, I'm one of the guys people will come to. And I think the best way to sway your team to do something is to give them the why behind it. Not, hey, we're going to use green light now because I said so. But if you explain to them, hey, traditionally red light has been utilized. However, it's got to be a dull red light. But now everybody's going to blue light because of the shorter wavelength. It doesn't bounce as much. People kind of buy into it more. Then we got another.
Again, I'm reading the questions here.
Yeah.
So I do have one on my helmet, but I don't use it too often. I have a normal headlamp with the band on it. I put that band around my shoulder straps so the headlamp kind of just hangs in the middle of my vest at about like top of my my sternal notch. It kind of just sits there. So I can turn my head anywhere I want, and I'm not projecting light that way. My light only stays in my work area directly in front of me.
Yep. And I will say, as far as gear goes, so one of the things that I do advocate for, whether it's an IR light on partner, an IR light on me, an IR flashlight, whatever you're using, any single device that you're using and they make them, try to have it so that if you press the button, the default mode that it's in is IR. And then you have to do like a press and hold or a 2-click or something to make it go visible. That would be one of my biggest caveats to any sort of IR device you're planning on putting on your gear to specifically use at nighttime.
Yeah, and the Streamlight, whatever, I found the light a second ago. The Streamlight Bandit, again, it's a cob light, so it's like a wider beam. And you can do that. So if you turn it on, it's white, or you can do it. If you preset it, you can turn it on so its first setting is red. So that's a good option there because I don't want it mega bright as soon as I turn it on. I want it to go kind of going to the last setting. It'll redo whatever your last setting was.
Okay, I just know like the IR beacon that I wear, the IR beacon that my dog wears. As soon as you press it, it automatically defaults to IR every time until you make it go visible. Next question 2 from Dan B. He said, I took a night vision course with Telluric Group a few years back as a civilian. My first course like this, it was a great experience. Earned the patch, lights out. MFer. That's cool.
I'm doing one more Amazon history search right here.
Cool. And then another Emma says, hey, probably not a good question, but if I don't put your light on your helmet, where do you put it? Which is kind of.
I already answered that. Got it. All right. I'm looking for lights here. Somebody mentioned the Streamlight headlamp earlier. Like I do have a headlamp. It has a little, Taylor, you have one too. Has a little flexible arm on it. It has a variable dull light. And this is what I use for reading the maps. That's a Princeton Tech one.
Yep.
There's one made by Streamlight that is pretty expensive. The one I got on Amazon is made by NEX Torch. So Next Torch. And it's like a third of the price. And it's pretty awesome. And you can have it preset to whatever color you want or IR. So you have it preset, and then you just hit on off button. Because I'm poor now, that's the helmet light I use at work.
There you go.
So,
And one of the things too, again, something that the little IR light that I do, it also has a vibrate feedback to kind of let you know if you're pressing the button or not. So again, good options, guys. Specific questions about gear, you can feel free to email me, Taylor@ranchstrategies.com, or Rich@ranchstrategies.com. We'll help you out as best we can. We've got a couple comms related emails from the last episode we did, and yeah, we hooked them up. So keep the questions coming. This is why we like doing the lives. But now let's talk specifically when we talk about low light medical work. It's not just a theory. There's actual research showing what happens to fine motor medical tasks when you're wearing night vision. And the research that we bring up in our class for references is clear. Night vision significantly degrades performance on precision tasks, especially, the terminal element will appreciate this, especially airway management. And, you know,
God,
one of the most what's up?
I said, oh God, I can't imagine that. Yeah.
So one of the most referenced studies that is out there comes from military medicine, and they tested anesthesiologists performing intubations in both an emergency room and a helicopter environment while wearing night vision. And this is because we always, when we're doing tactical medical work, especially talk about night vision and low light and this and that, they think we're doing like every skill under night vision, but we always default to the research and the studies that have been done for explanations and things. And in those studies, the results, they weren't subtle by any stretch of the imagination. Intubation times increased, success rates dropped, mainly because your depth perception suffered. So we can't see, the cuff of the tube passing through the vocal cords and saying, hey, now I'm in, or you're getting some bright main stem intubations and whatnot. So, even experienced clinicians struggled because NVGs distorted distance and flattened detail.
Just shove an eye gel in and hope for the best, I guess. Yeah.
So, yeah. Now, and what's cool is there have been companies out there, because there's been another study that looked at specifically modified laryngoscopes designed specifically for doing under night vision, and that helped, which is kind of cool. But it helped a little bit. So even with specialized equipment being made just for that skill, performance still didn't match normal light conditions. But this was probably back before eye gels were even a thing. So,
and the cost associated with things like that, just with like specialty CBURN medical equipment, the cost associated additional training just doesn't translate, especially to our world, from the military to our world.
Right. So, and basically there's they also did one with venous access and whatnot, but there's a pattern across every study that I've read, and that's that NVGs make airway procedures slower, harder, and less reliable. And the human factor limitations don't go away just because the gear improves.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is prior preparation and training. Like we add, when we run our low light classes, we have an airway station, right? Maybe make it more difficult in a training session than it would be, hopefully, in reality.
Sure. No, and again, maybe somebody out there is more up to do it. Because again, IVs also are always brought up. There's almost no published studies on starting IVs under night vision. And I think that absence of data and literature and studies is meaningful in the fact that IV access depends on subtle visual cues, your skin tones, your vein distensions, the flashback that you get in the catheter. And those cues, as we just said, how much different blood can look under different lighting, those cues are almost impossible to interpret through NVGs.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Under night vision, we talk about these devices that they have that can either, whether they go right against your skin, there's some devices like that that will light up your vasculature, or if you're using different colored lighting, that's all visible light. There's nothing really out there that's totally um, non-light producing or infrared to do that. That's one of those things where you might have to go off night vision and just use a little bit of light to get it done. Right? Use your feelings. You use your your dexterity, to find those veins and find that vasculature and get it done.
Yep. And I think that's why, most operational medical guidance that you can find kind of just assumes that you'll need white light for IV access, or you'll use an alternative method that doesn't really rely on visual detail that you normally need. So I would say, what does all of this mean for real world low light medical work? I think the biggest thing is it means that night vision has limits. It's great for movement, it's great for navigation and your environmental awareness. But when you hit a point where you need color, where you need contrast, or you need that fine detail, especially for airway or vascular access, a visible light source becomes a medical necessity.
Yep, and that's what we've been talking about. It's just up to you to experiment and choose what you're going to use. We're not going to use some, again, some streamlight, giant scene light or whatever, or your pot. We have other things to use other than white lights.
Yeah, and I think that ties directly back to our earlier sections that, if stealth matters, you preserve it. But once the situation demands precision, once the medical need outweighs the tactical benefit, you got to transition to visible light.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Risk reward thing. Yep.
Right. I just wanted to tie it all back. Exactly. So I think another thing too is that movement is one of the biggest challenges in the low light medical environment and low light medical work. The environment which you're in becomes unfamiliar. We addressed it just before. Your depth perception changes, and even the simplest of tasks require more deliberate control.
Yeah, and I think with that, again, with everything else, just time under nods for you, for your team, right? Because if you're worried about just walking, right, you take care of that by just being under nods a whole lot, and then everything else you can just deal with that now, not have to worry about your basic tasks about how to walk. You're worried about your depth perception. You'll kind of be familiar with that already, so you can conquer other things.
Yep.
Just time under nods. I tell my guys all the time under nods. They wonder why we're going to a building again to, do room entries again with night vision. We barely use it, but, whatever. But it's because we specifically need time under these devices to get used to them for those few small times we do need to actually use them.
Sure. No, and that's, I think one of the first rules that you should apply in doing an operation like this would be to reduce unnecessary movement, because every step increases the chance of losing orientation or bumping into an obstacle. So if you don't need to move, don't, because I mean, how many times have you been in a situation where you may, call for a pause, do an LPOP, because stillness kind of preserves your awareness.
No, definitely. Stillness definitely is going to put a halt to any inputs that are coming in from any movements you're making, and make you aware to everything else.
Yeah. And then I would say almost another rule would be to address it right up front. Move with intention. Don't rush. no shuffling. Everything needs to be controlled, deliberate steps. You're not just moving your body, you're the entire time you're working, you're managing noise, you're managing your balance, your footprint in the environment.
No, yeah, you have to move deliberately at night. I mean, you're gonna fall on your face if you don't.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and then I would say something that really has to be practiced a lot, but goes to with everything that we're saying is the fact that, you know, you need to use your feet as sensors. I talked about meal motion tripping. You've talked about trying to work on night vision. One of the big things we do, night one of our low light course ends with like a, long duration moving through the woods under night vision course, because in low light, especially in night vision, your feet are telling you more than your eyes. You will feel the changes in terrain, any debris that you're stepping across or kind of brushing up against, any elevation changes that you're finding, and any obstacles that you're encountering long before your eyes see them.
All your other senses are amplified. One video you use of me particularly is remember the reload drill we were doing, and I'm pretty familiar with shooting. I do a whole lot of it, and just doing a simple rifle reload, which usually takes me like, I don't know, like half a second. I couldn't find a mag well, even though I thought in my head that every time, it's like the way I train is I'm using the feeling in my hands to do it every time. But nope, there must have been something where I do use a little bit of my vision to feed that in there. And I found that out when we were in zero light and I was trying to do it.
Well,
so again, it just goes back to training.
Thing. We didn't even realize all of us was wearing night vision. And then when you actually look, it's like, oh no, it is pitch black here. So you didn't have any of that peripheral vision to even go off of to do your mag change. And yes, I use it as an example in the class because I'm like, hey, Rich is a SWAT guy. How many mag changes do you think he's done? I mean, tens of thousands.
Yeah, I don't know, a few, yeah.
But under night vision, everything changed.
But in my head, hey, the way I train is I use my fingers to index it. So in my head, I thought it was all just a movement thing, not thinking that it still had anything to do with my vision because I'm always looking downrange. In reality, it really did. There still was a little bit in there that I'll still, depending on my vision for. And that was taken away from me. I'm glad I learned it at training rather than in the field.
Yeah, it is amazing how much changed, especially because your eyes, I think your brain is trying to catch up to the fact of your brain's still thinking it can kind of see, but there is no peripheral vision there. And that's what really screwed you up. But in the comments, hey, Chris says, I'm taking so much of this stuff to my agency. Dude, that's awesome. Again, any additional info you need, any, kind of studies or whatever you need, shoot us an email. We'll send you any resources we can. And then Emma said, that's something I need to work on. Quelling the fear or anxiety so that I can be mindful in my actions. That would be huge.
Don't be afraid of the dark. We own the night.
No. So own the night. Yeah. But again, so yeah, our feet again can feel all these elevation changes, the obstacles we encounter. And I think another big thing is, especially if you're moving as a team, especially doing medical interventions, treating a patient, whatever the case is, you need to learn how to maintain spacing because low light compresses spacing naturally. People just tend to drift closer together without realizing it. And that in itself creates collisions, confusion, and ultimately blocks lines of movement.
You're concentrating on not tripping and falling on your face. So you stop worrying about things like proper spacing or proper formations. If we're trying to do some sort of T formation, you stop worrying about how your formation looks and you're worried about just not falling. I think is what it comes down to. Yeah.
Well, and then all of these principles matter even more when you're responsible for moving a patient.
Yeah.
Extraction in low light isn't just about getting someone from point A to point B. It's really about doing it without creating new problems.
New patients. Yeah. And I definitely learned this doing woodland search and rescue years ago during the night. You find somebody, treat somebody, and you have a team of 6 dudes trying to move somebody out on the Stokes basket through a wooded area, no trails. It's almost like you got to put that clown music on because everybody's constantly tripping and trying to.
And herein lies the problem. When you're moving a patient, your movement becomes their movement.
Yep,
so
exactly. That's why we put helmets on them.
Yeah, because any stumble, any misstep, any loss of orientation affects both of you. So yeah, all the same rules apply, but now they're amplified double.
Yep. Nah, absolutely. That's what night does.
Yeah, and especially in that scenario when you're literally responsible for carrying somebody else, this is where all that stuff of reducing unnecessary movement, that means, planning before touching the patient, knowing your path, knowing your obstacles, know your team's position, because you don't want to discover the hazards while you're already committed to the lift. Which almost sounds right back to pre-planning everything.
With the communications, with the med stuff, with the night vision stuff, any pre-planning. Pre-planning, practice, training. Yep.
And I think also, we said it very early on, but this is especially where moving with intention becomes critical. Those slow, deliberate transitions, having clear communication, and just having everyone involved needs to know what direction the team is going and when.
Yeah, man. No, absolutely. That just loops back to everything we already talked about. Yeah.
Yeah. And kind of going right back, I think this is where using your feet as sensors, like I had mentioned before, this matters even more when your hands are occupied.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're supporting a patient, your feet become your primary source of environmental feedback. They tell you, what's coming before your eyes can.
Yeah, that's why old people crash their cars all the time, because they start to lose feeling in their feet.
There you go.
Because of diabetes or whatever, they start to lose feeling, and that's why they can't feel their gas and their brake, and they end up crashing all the time.
And this is also where your spacing becomes a safety concern, because in low light, we just said, the people kind of crowd in, and during extraction, that can trap the team, block movement, or just create bottlenecks in areas. So maintaining spacing keeps the path open and your movement smooth.
Yeah, definitely. But again, something you have to practice. We talk about it all we want until we actually go to do it. Yeah, or during training, you see that it happens every time, and hey, this is why we do this.
And that's why I think this would be the big takeaway, that low light movement is never casual. It's intentional, it's coordinated, and you have to be constantly aware of the environment. And when a patient is involved, the margin for error shrinks even further.
No, absolutely. I think it's great to end on that. You have to be pre-planned. Your movements have to be intentional, and you have to communicate them, because there's a lot of more stuff involved.
Yeah, well, so we could end it here, or we could get into the treatment priorities in low light.
I say we end it here, and our next video is about treatment priorities.
We'll start with treatment priorities.
Yeah.
We're already over an hour.
We're already over an hour. Yep.
So guys, thank you for hanging out with us. Wednesday night for comms midweek, whether it's Wednesday or Thursday, I'll consult with Rich on which night that's going to be.
Yep.
We're going to get into some of the comms physiology, as well as drills that you can do and practice to help be more comms efficient. And then next Sunday for Tax Sundays, We're going to start this off back under night vision, back in low light with the treatment priorities in low light conditions, and we'll just build from there because this alone just ate an hour up really, really quick.
Yeah, it flew by.
Yeah, it really did.
So back up to Emma. So practice, practice, practice. So practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. So whether you're training the wrong way or the right way, whatever you practice is going to become what's in your brain. So practice makes permanent.
So guys, I like it. So with that, we'll see the next one. Be safe.
Can't be safe, be deadly. Talk to you soon.
Check your six, the shadows creep, silent steps, we never sleep. Call the shots, the team's in sync. Radio crack, we're on the brink. Breach the door, flashing clear, echoes loud in your ear. Coordinates that we move as one. Missions hop, the battles won. Waiting.